Who to trust? Who to trust? That became my dilemma. Anybody who remembers the old way of thinking before Sanctuary went through its different mutations is a more trustworthy thinker. And of those people who were not warped by Pak Jahan's actions and warped by the rationalizations they had to make, those people are kind of trustworthy. And by trustworthy, it means people to talk to about the reality the way that it truly is. Sometimes you need to talk things over, like what the heck is it that we're looking at, like for real, like let's call it what it is, without any rationale that supports some crap that's been cooked up, right? So there are a few people around me at the time, February, who are able to talk straight, you know. So here's what we have. We have a situation where there was this blessing coming up, and it was touted as the real Foundation Day blessing. And I remember the first Foundation Day. The first Foundation Day, you got so many different types of messages about the meaning of Foundation Day as it approached. Same thing you were getting out of Sanctuary, including the levels memo being abolished and all of that confusion. I remember being in the ceremony in 2013 with no firm grasp of what it is I should focus on so that I could commune with God and the entire cosmos about where my body was, you know, so that I could have mind-body unity. I remember not having that because there was no clear message as to what Foundation Day truly meant. So in like manner, I felt that all the people who stand up pontificating about the meaning of Foundation Day, you could poke holes through everything that they were saying. So there's no way. Hyungjin, if nothing, had said that we had all been stripped of the blessing, right? Because we attended Foundation Day. And so that became the rationale for returning to Father's authority. This thing called a return to Father's authority, because attending Foundation Day, unbeknownst to us, caused us to forfeit our relationship with the blessed realm. So I'm like, okay, I know parallels come. Especially Satan wants to use the same machinery he used to get a victory before. I'm starting to see parallels. I said, people not being able to be clear about what its meaning is. Hyungjin raising himself as emperor, like Pak Jahan, empress, and you know, all those other parallels I told you. So I'm like, if I can examine the first Foundation Day blessing, this new blessing with Mrs. Kong installed, and see where they're going. I hadn't even fully examined the issue of Mrs. Kong because I didn't have time. I tabled it. And so without me even having, at that time, fully digested the whole weirdness of 923, the part that we were all ambushed by, I certainly didn't want to repeat the mistake of 2013, where I just unite, trust blindly, go to an event, and in that event be an accusation against me. So yeah, so I didn't go, and I remember my family got a very strong Rima or this kind of thing, that when it was read, I didn't read it, one of my kids did. When it was read, we became all of one accord. During that time, my wife was struggling because she has friends in the church and this kind of thing, and she went through some experiences where, you know, God chastised her and used the word prostitute. He said, are you a prostitute? In other words, are you selling out your principles? Do you put your principles away? Do you throw them away just to get friendship or just to have, you know, camaraderie? And she got a stiff upper lip, and she was like, no, I'm not. The second dream she had, in the dream, Cookjin was waiting for her to join in some photo op. And she remembered feeling like, in the dream, she was like, oh my God, I'm wanted, right? And then she wakes up with that feeling fresh on her, and she was like, oh my God, I'm like such a little puppy dog over a photograph, over a little sign of being accepted and embraced, right? So she was able to see that, you know, over being included in this group and being seen as a you know, somebody who's remembered and wanted and this kind of stuff could cause you to just ignore issues that you have with that person, you know? Like totally ignore anything that that person had done that was questionable or wrong. You stop questioning that person because you're getting this emotional kick. or you're getting this emotional benefit from the person. Okay, so after she had that dream, she realized that, you know, one of the strategies that were purposely employed in sanctuary is how effective it is, which harkens back to the planning meetings before sanctuary was opened. We were reading from some megachurch booklet on best practices, right? How to make cell groups, and how to give everyone a feeling of significance in the church through, like, you know, dividing up tasks, stuff like that. Anyway, yeah. So we didn't go to Foundation Day, and my wife and my kids were getting. And then anyway, they were slowly being emotionally extracted out of this social dependency on the church. We had gone through it before, and it's not a, the process itself doesn't feel good. So, you know, it's good not to get in with people who don't know where they're going ultimately, because when you find out that they're leading you in the wrong way, of course you have to break up. You have to have a breakup, you know, and. So yeah, I've done it many times, but my wife being a woman and my kids being kids, I was just very grateful. That's Marley running on the pool cover. I was just very grateful that they came through it. And they came through it with God. They came through it with the Word of God. Okay, enough about that. Here's my breakdown of Hyungjin and Mrs. Kang. Hyungjin himself, he was crowned by Father. Father later that year, I think it was 2009, said that those ceremonies were about not just him, but all of us going beyond the pass, some barrier that we all have to breach or go through, right? We have to go beyond this pass. And he said this wasn't a ceremony. These crowning ceremonies of Hyungjin, in Father's mind, meant that Hyungjin was representative of all of us. Okay, so those are Father's words about the ceremony. So it wasn't literally just about Hyungjin or just about Father's immediate family in Father's mind. It was a ceremony that meant all the children going beyond the past. So this is, when I found that, when one of my friends showed me Father's commentary on those crownings, I said it makes total sense, because what is it that I was telling Hyungjin a couple of weeks before he moved in Cookjin's house? I was telling him, I said, you can be an example of how to put on or wear or act out your mandate, because we're all facing the same thing, okay? You know, it's funny that somebody told me in his 2-hour rant, he was saying that I'm just jealous of him. I wish that I had been crowned instead of him. and I'm like, but I was crowned, you know? And then this quote comes up, I think it's November of 2009, where Father is saying that, I'll put it in the description, where Father is saying that those crownings were not just about Father and his family. It's about all of us. So anyway, this shows, if Hyungjin can say that I'm jealous of him, it shows that he adopted Cookjin's view of the crown, where he's on a tier, an upper tier, that would engender jealousy, because that's the whole thing about stratification. You know, there's only so much room at the top, and people start to kick each other in the face, because it is a zero-sum game up there. It is a zero-sum game. It does matter that you defeat other people if you want to occupy the upper tiers. It does matter that they fail and fall to the wayside so that you can ascend in the ranks. Okay, it does matter, because where you end up, like if you think heaven is a hierarchy and you have to climb to higher tiers of the hierarchy in order to get closer to God, which I guess a lot of people suffer from thinking that way. Anyway, so when Hyungjin says that I'm jealous, it has stratification in it. The accusation itself presupposes stratification as the matrix of the way we relate, and I don't see us in that stratified matrix, so there's no jealousy. Okay, there's no jealousy. It was just me trying to help my brother. So what happened to him? Well, he rebirthed himself. He became a new person. He said that on 9/23 he was reborn. So he fashioned some way to rebirth himself, and he rebirthed Miss Kang. He rebirthed the nature of Mrs. Kang. He created a narrative and did a ceremony wherein she becomes this other person. He coaxed her into leaving her original blessed husband, and she became a new person and a new structure, and a new couple was created from which he saw himself as being born through. So on 9/23, he was setting conditions of making this real by touching Mrs. Kong's breast in public. And because in his mind, the condition was set that she's his mother, and that's what kids do. Who is this new person? Who is this new person? And I'm really not going to talk about Mr. Kong so much, but Father gave Hyunjin a crown. Okay. Then in 2015, Kukjin gave Hyunjin a crown. Or other people, the Nazgul, joined forces to fashion a new narrative, create a new narrative, generate a new narrative, and give Hyunjin a new crown. Well, that new king, or that new position that exists underneath that crown, is a particular one, and it is either the one imagined by conscious people or unconscious people, faithful people or unfaithful people. So if you have people who are liberated from this whole stratified archangelic hierarchy mindset, like Father, then when he gives you a crown, it means one thing. But if you receive a crown from a bunch of hierarchy people who just want to place you at the top of the hierarchy, then you become a creature of the hierarchy by wearing their crown. Because by wearing their crown, you are in agreement with them to just sort of accept the nature of the relationship that they're looking for. Like I said, so God warned the Israelites off of the idea of having a king, because it's going to reach this limit that's going to bring pain to them. So I think that he began to be remade, not just rebranded, or not just clothed in new clothing. He had to take on, he was taking on some of the spirit of the people that were propping him up. He didn't need Kukjin's crown. He already had one. And if he didn't have the physical crown, he still had the crown. You can't erase that from history. So he has this new crown, and he has this new birth. What was wrong with the first birth of a true child? What was wrong? Father says that Adam was reborn as the son of Satan, because as he went into Eve's sexual organ, he went in as Adam, okay? And he died right there. He died. He ceased to be the son of God upon going into Eve's sexual organ in that illicit way, okay? And then he said that Adam came out of Eve's sexual organ as if born a son of Satan, okay? And this is an explanation related to the 3-day ceremony, that the husband goes in as archangel, and especially on the third day emerges as son of God, because he went into that sexual organ by God's prompting instead of Satan's prompting, and so he comes out as the son of God. This is a reversal of the fall. So if you have Hyunjin rebirthing himself, that is essentially a nullification of his first birth as far as he's concerned. Now, it'd be really nice if Father just bats away 9/23 and says, this is just ridiculous. But if it was real and is to be taken literally, then Hyunjin was in a state of devaluing or discarding his first birth. Why would you take on a second birth or another birth unless you were killing the first birth? I mean, you can't be two people. You can't be born twice as two different people. One, the old person has to die for the other person. That's what the nature of baptism. You go down, okay, into the water is an act of symbolizing you giving up your old life. So how can he be reborn without discarding the person that existed prior? The person that existed prior was the person crowned by True Father. The person existing prior was the one born. None of the true children's births are accused. The idea that their births are accused because of Hakchahan's latter days failure that's satanic. That is a trick of Satan. That is a trick of Satan designed to divorce you from the reality of your own identity. Okay? It is a trick of Satan. It is a false flag. It is a false flag. It is an empty threat. It has no meaning. Hakchahan's latter days failures does not undo a true birth. So a true child was born in 1979, September 26th, and that person was good enough for heaven. Now, if this new person that he is from 9/23, well, it's not even physical. It's all psychological. It's a spiritual rebirth at best, but it does represent a spiritual invasion of something that's less solid. The Messiah came to make a more solid transition of lineage, okay, to change the lineage physically. And so true children are the best examples of this new lineage. And here's this true child, and he's discarding that identity for what he thinks is a superior identity, one that is of a mother that doesn't have Hakchahan's problems. That's unfortunate, because he would then have to discard the physicality, the physicalness, the tangible nature of his actual birth, which is a part of physical salvation. Yeah, there's tremendous problems with this idea that he rebirthed himself in order to fit with some narrative in the Book of Revelations. And then he could peddle himself off to the Christians as the manifestation of something mentioned in the Book of Revelations. Father interpreted the Bible and even said we don't even need the Bible anymore. Father gave Hyungjin, as an act of giving all of us, the 8 textbooks. So why are you so severely warping yourself, Hyungjin, over something that's said in the Bible is a secondary source at best. The 8 textbooks should be the primary source, or you're dishonoring the ceremony whereby he passed those books to you. I mean, so, yeah. During February 2018, I was still dealing with looking at 923 and all that it really meant about Hyungjin's internal state. Because it's obvious he had gone through changes. And that ceremony gave him permission to act differently. To what degree, I was still finding out. And the intrusion of the Nazgul in the matching. Listen, I'm not talking about this matching because I was a part of it. I'm talking about this matching because the matching is one of the central aspects of the tradition of heaven. And so you would hope that the person championing, who was being the champion, one of God's champions, that they would be clear about that and not let somebody else's politics or resentment and this kind of thing be the reason why they consider this matching candidate over that matching candidate and this type of thing. You know, that he'd be more grounded in a different standard. So that had been disturbing to me. So his relationship with the Nazgul and their power to invade that. So I was seeing a person who was rapidly changing. So now after I think about it, I believe that over the process of being under Kukjin and the Nazgul, where the Nazgul pushed people like me and Robert out. Again, I don't think Robert's the best person, but he did understand, he did have substantial experience with the era of decentralization. So I respected the fact that God would have him there to tell everybody what it was, because none of those people had that decentralization experience. They were yearning for the place of decentralization. So God and Spirit World brought them here. As a matter of fact, God brought my family here 2 months before Father passed. So if this was all inevitable, they were coming here to get infected with the spirit of decentralization or fourth atomism. They had been kicked out of the palace anyway. He comes here with his handicap. He comes to Pennsylvania and he employs all the people who have the same handicap as Hakchahan's handlers. Okay, and so if those people, sneer at people like me and box me out, which did happen, he's only got these little moments that he would steal from me and Robert when it seems like nobody's really looking, to get a different type of opinion. And he let it remain that way, but it's that way because the spirit of the old age is hostile towards the spirit of the new age. So anyway, what did those guys actually do with him? They put a different crown on him with their narrative behind that crown, and then they actually, with this new powers, these overblown new powers, he sees himself as having the authority to divorce Mrs. Kong from St. Augustine. And this shit is disturbing. This shit is disturbing. I mean, I remember being totally blinded by the relationship, give and take action itself. I remember being blinded by the fact that I was asked to come up with a filing against Hakchahan at the time that they were preparing this new blessing between Mrs. Kong and Father. And to be honest with you, I'm standing up front. I'm doing my job. I list out. Listen, the case against Hakchahan was a feat of paperwork. You just take other data that had been generated by other brothers and sisters about Hakchahan. I take my own understanding of the principle and I fashion it into a narrative that she should repair a few things as an act of repentance. That's really what that was. But I was, what's the word, distracted by it, and then I'm ambushed. So after I read that document, and my focus is now can shift. I'm in this weird ceremony. I'm in this weird ceremony. So the way that they came up with the way that ceremony should be staged and blocked out on the stage and everything. Of course, I had no say in it. Did he come up with that by himself? I don't know. You don't know. You don't know or did the Nazgul come up with it? These people who have problems. These people who are ignorant. And if they're ignorant, what level of awareness are they deriving all this meaning and these ceremonies from? I don't know. It's problematic. Somebody came up with that stratified blessing crap. They don't know that they're ignorant. Ignorant people don't know they're ignorant many times. Just like kids. Kids don't know that they don't know until they have a rude awakening. And but people who don't know that they don't know created this spectacle. Anyway, what am I really saying? Do I believe that Mrs. Kong is true mother? How could I? How could I? I mean, they left me in a state of spinning with no relationship to the principle. The only way that I could or should or am expected to believe in Mrs. Kong as the true mother is to believe in this absolute authority of Hyungjin, the guy who performed the ceremony, the marriage ceremony. And I don't believe that he has absolute authority, because if he had absolute authority, it would mean that he could write new things into existence, and it would mean Father lied when Father said the final words of the true parents have already been prepared. He said that he finished it. He said that, so because we finished it, we could register already. So do we need Hyungjin to exhibit this type of power and authority at this time in history? The answer is no. We don't need new words. We don't need such feats of authority or feats of power. Even Hak Jahan, I remember Kukjin would say at the potluck that Hak Jahan grabbed the ring. Like Frodo grabbed the ring right at the crack of doom, right? He snatches the ring for himself. He's overcome and he grabs the ring of power. And he said Hak Jahan couldn't resist the ring of power. That's what Kukjin used to say. So they worked on Hyungjin. They tried to coax him to move into Kukjin's house for a year. He resisted, but all his resistance expired by the end of 2016. I remember when me and Robert talked to him at the end of 2016, I told you about this. We were saying to him, this is not you. Why are you doing this? You are chasing Father. I even told him, I said, your daughter said that more than that palace in Korea, she if she had to choose, she would stay in that little house with you and your family. So he was just excited because he had, I guess, sipped on this Kool-Aid, because he said, yeah, but my kingdom's coming back, and when it comes back, I'll have to entertain dignitaries. And I'm like, the idea that his kingdom, something that he doesn't possess now, is coming back is a faithless statement that he inherited from somebody. In other words, this sounded like the final sales pitch in some meeting where the people who wanted to push this new Camelot, they finally got him. They pushed him for a year to move into Kukjin's place. He didn't want to. He resisted for a year. So anyway, what am I talking about? I'm talking about a fight about who Hyungjin was raging. And then ultimately he takes a crown that wasn't Father's original crown. It was a crown of a different meaning. And then he takes on the narrative that his kingdom is this external thing that could be stripped from him, and he has to be in a state of waiting for it to come back. That is a pessimistic view. And I don't have that view. I don't live in the richest neighborhood, but I don't have that view. But they in that narrative coaxed him into making certain changes, and Mrs. Kong is one of those changes. They I don't know why they felt that they had to do that, except fidelity to a narrative that Mother had left Father with no counterpart. So so raise up a woman that's not married already. There's a problem with that. I mean, what God has put together, let no man put asunder. I mean, so how's my feeling towards Mrs. Kong? Well, I remember in her birthday party, or banquet at Skytop, shortly after 9/23. I get there, and she's talking towards the end of the event. And towards the end, she sighs and she goes, I just do what I'm told. And when she called my family to see if we left because of her, it's either she wanted to know if a guy like me found her position as true mother as problematic, or she wanted to ensure me that share her rationale for why it's okay. None of that was talked about. She just wanted to make sure that she wasn't the reason that I left. And she was okay with me leaving. She said, I'm not worried about you anymore. So Mrs. Kong, I feel, when she says, I just do what I'm told, it's through this obedience angle, this absolute obedience angle, that she finds her ultimate justification in that, well, I obeyed the one who has ultimate authority. And so the problem is, Hyungjin doesn't have ultimate authority. So I believe that he is, well, in the shoes of a deceiver. And I think there's a bigger deceiver behind him. It's the Hidden King and the Nazgul. And so what do we do as blessed people now? Well, Father left us a way to register and said that it's all done. Once we register, it's done, and we could register through the books. So what's really going on at Sanctuary? What's really going on at Sanctuary is religious theater of a quality that basically people of a certain degree of faith will find entertaining. That's what's going on at Sanctuary. Other than that, there's nothing that any of us need that's happening in Sanctuary, because Father gave us the 8 textbooks. And Father, by giving the crown to Hyungjin and doing that ceremony, was uplifting the 4th Adam nature, the 3rd King nature of all of us. The only problem is we must go beyond the past and pass, and we must register. Again, I'll put the quote in the description where Father's explaining that Hyungjin's crowning was a crowning for all of us. And it symbolized something, and that is a done deal. So whatever Hyungjin does after this point really can't change the relationship between us and Father. Okay, yeah, I hope that's clear. I'll be calling around to you, my friends, to see what you think. If I need to make the point clearer about Mrs. Khan, because I know some people are suffering because of this. I'm not suffering. I came to terms with the fact that when I had the miracle of my own rebirth, it was Sun Myung Moon and Hak Ja-han that was standing there as true parents. And I'm okay with that, even if Hak Ja-han came into confusion in her latter days. All right? All right. Also, we inherited the serious position of true parents, so if, you know, things get really, really bad, we can stand as true parents. And I think a lot of you folks should explore that, because relying on the church or churches is, I think, all of this means we're being squeezed out of that crutch. And this is leaving us no choice but to explore the true meaning of 4th Adam, the era of stand alone. Okay, stand on our own. That's what 4th Adam means, per Father's comments. All right, so I think that's where we are. True children, true family, the class of people called true family have left us no choice but to explore this final principled path, whereby we don't have the assistance of them demonstrating the right way to live, to go by. We have to dive into the book, and we have to be registered through the book. Once we're registered, Father said, it's absolutely, totally complete. Then you could go and do whatever you want. Just follow the textbooks. Father's words, 2011. All right, talk to you later.